Good afternoon, guys. Welcome to Freedom Deals Live. So today is the 3rd of December. It is a big week for me. We are the first week of December, and as of a couple of days ago, I am officially 40 years old. So where on earth that went, I don't know. So yeah, exciting times. It's been. I was pretty spoilt. The month of November effectively turned out to be the month of Peter. So thanks to all the family and friends that made a big deal out of it. And now I'm on the other side and I'm officially part of the 40s Club. So today is a recording. I'm recording it this morning on the 3rd of December. Basically got some site stuff happening this afternoon, which I wanted to make sure I was able to do this for you today. And I wasn't quite positive I was going to be able to do it live. So I wanted to make sure I delivered it either way. So for those of you that are new to this, Freedom Deals Live, what do? We pull apart real deals. These can be deals that I'm doing right now. These can be deals that I'm looking at right now. But the point being is this is real stuff. And often I'm actually doing this live with you for the first time, because the way it works in my team these days is I have my acquisitions manager. He does all of this stuff. And when there is something that gets interesting, then it gets put in front of me. So often, if they are deals that we've decided not to move ahead with, I won't have even seen it yet until I go through it with you guys for the first time. And sometimes even if it is deals we do go ahead with, I'm seeing it for the first time with you guys. So that's done by design. The idea is I want you to see this raw, to see how I don't have 100% certainty over everything the first time I cast my eyes over it. So if I can't do it after over a decade of doing this and doing a lot of it, then you shouldn't expect that of yourself either. So manage expectations of yourselves. So let's get into this. So this one at face value is pretty simple. So let's see if we can make it work. Because for those of you that have done my training programs, you'll recall that I talk about pillars. You need the right property, you need the right strategy, you need the right seller. Oops, pardon me. And you need an edge. So with this one, I'm going to tell you right now, we've got the right strategy, we've got the right property, we have an edge. Do we have the right seller? So that's going to be the question mark on this one. And I emphasize that and I harp on about this quite a lot, because this is where I do see a lot of people go wrong early on, is they find those, but ultimately they've got the wrong seller and they just keep trying to force the property to work because it ticks all the other boxes. But I've got to tell you guys, if you don't have the right seller, the right circumstances, the right level of motivation, then it's just not going to work. You're better off moving on quickly. Figure it out quickly, move on to the next thing. So let's have a look at this one. So this one is a live one on the market, and it looks pretty stock standard, 804 square meters. This is in Brisbane. This is a very, very common style of property in Brisbane. And I will foreshadow this with, there may be a couple of interruptions in this session where I may need to pause it just with a couple of things I've got going on with sites. But I'll try and make that as invisible as possible on the recording. So 804, 20 meter frontage, 40 meters deep. That is as stock standard as they come in Southeast Queensland. This is the very normal size block and dimensions of block, where we typically subdivide it straight down the middle, 10 meters wide, roughly 40 meters long, and we end up with just over 400 square meters. What are the benefits of that? Is it's cookie cutter. When it comes to selling the land, that means that there are many designs available to the open market for that exact shape of block, which makes it much easier to sell. As soon as you start moving away from what the typical style of block is and you start talking custom design, that's now created a hurdle for selling. Does that mean you shouldn't do it? No, but just be aware of that's going to reduce your buyer pool, because this sort of thing, which is cookie cutter, is what most of the market is looking for, because it's like buy off the shelf. They can walk into any builder, they'll have a dozen designs or more for that exact dimension of block. So they get a very high level of certainty. Okay, now zoning here is low density residential. So we've got the right zoning, we've got the right strategy. The block at face value is the right size and dimensions from a town planning perspective. The house, I can tell you, is not worth much, so that's good for us, because in this case here, you would definitely need to demolish the house if you were to subdivide it. So all of these things are pretty great start in terms of its prospects as a subdivision site. House was built in 1981. So again, like I said, it's not in great shape. There's not a lot of value in it, which is great for us for a 1 to 2. Let's have a look at the street view if we can see much from it. Okay. It's across the street. All right, I believe this is us here. Let's just double check. No, white fence there. I think it's a bit tricky with street view sometimes. is us here. Okay, now one of the things that stands out to me immediately is notice it slopes away from the street. Now, while we're here, we've got overhead power. Okay, there's a power pole right here. All right, so overhead power might have been possible for one block here, but second block over here, it's definitely going to need underground or a property pole. But yeah, what I'm noticing here straight away is the property slopes away from the street. So I'm talking about discharge. What are you doing with the stormwater? You're not allowed to just let it flow onto the neighboring site behind. So that's question mark number one. Anything else we need to see from the street view here? Doesn't appear that we will need any kind of road upgrades. We're not directly at the intersection, so that's good. That no likely complications arising from that. We've got one existing crossover. Also paying attention to the standard kind of fencing in the street. Still a lot of the old cyclone fencing around. So in terms of what the minimum requirement would be for us, definitely at most a 6-foot timber fence. Okay. All right, that's about all I think I want to see from the street view. Okay, so there's really nothing much standing out to me here as a negative apart from the fact that it slopes to the rear. Because if we look at this, we've got two properties behind. You know, if we need to get water out from behind, that may not be so straightforward. So if we can't find a solution for that, if we can't get a pipe through here, then it's a requirement to fill the block, which means retaining around the outside and then filling to be able to get stormwater to the front. Unless potentially there's stormwater infrastructure down here in the road, which is deep enough for us to run a pipe from the back to there. That's one possibility. So on that note, let's have a look at what is available from a servicing perspective. Okay, well, this is, oops, just get that away. This is as good as one could hope in this situation. Why do I say that? Well, I mentioned about if there is stormwater infrastructure in the road that is deep. Now, what I don't like about this option here is it's smack bang in the middle of the road. So if we were to want to try and pipe into that, that's going to be expensive because it's going to require road closure. It's going to require traffic control. All of these things are very expensive. So I don't like that as a solution. But what is incredibly interesting is this, that there is an existing stormwater pipe actually running through the property behind into ours. And to give you some perspective as to how rare that is, just look at all the properties along here. I mean, this doesn't have it, this doesn't have it, this doesn't have it, this doesn't have it. Now, I don't know if there's an existing swale situation here that creates a drainage solution across all the back of these to these drainage points here. I'm not sure. But this is not that common, really, at all. So when this does tend to happen these days is, let's say this site behind was a development site. So if you were buying, let's say this was another 810 square metre block at the back here. If you were buying the downstream property here in Brisbane City Council, these days, if you were subdividing it, they would most likely have you put a pipe in to service the future development of the upstream property. So that's when that tends to happen these days. But based on this, that is not a recent development. And you can see that there's a bit of a pattern here that they've obviously done this at some point as a systemic thing, which, yeah, really not very common in this area. So that's an incredible break of luck that is there. So that should be our stormwater solution. One way or another, that should be our stormwater solution, which is fantastic. Very rare that you have that. If this was this property here, not so straightforward, because even if that is here currently with a swale to service all of this, whether or not the council would still see that as an acceptable solution under today's standards, not so sure. So then there may be permissions required for the neighbour that has access to the pipe and all those sorts of things. But in this case here, we are the property with the access, which is like, that's seriously lucky. Okay, so stormwater, we have identified a solution. Okay, so we are this one here. Again, this doesn't get much better than this because the property slopes from the front to the back and the sewer runs across the back fence. So the property slopes towards the sewer, which is perfect. Remember, water is pressurized, so water can go uphill. Sewer, typically not. So should be standard connections at the road, should be standard connections at the back. That's awesome. Fantastic. Energex, as we already saw, there are these polls here. Now, look, you used to be able to do pretty consistently property polls where you do an overhead connection from this pole to this new block here, and then you would do a property pole over here, run a wire from a cable from this pole to your property pole and into here. You can't just assume that that will be allowed anymore. The councils are wanting that less and less and less, and typically they will now make you go underground. Now, you can always query that, you can challenge it. Sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. But from a budgeting perspective, until you have confirmation on that, you should assume that you're going to have to go underground. Don't really care about that right now. We've got Telstra. Strangely enough, an NBN map didn't actually come with this one. So look, I would be shocked if there's not NBN. I'd say that's more of a just a glitch. But even if there's not, there is Telstra here. So either way, we have communications. In a place like Brisbane City Council, the chances of you not having communications is nearly nil. Okay, so all right, that's pretty awesome. It's really pretty awesome. That's about as simple as a 1 to 2 can get. So let's have a look at the numbers. All right, so we're doing 2 lots. Now, should say, remember, I know this is a recording, but if you pop your comments and your questions into YouTube, I will check and I will answer them. So act as though this is live, put your comments and your questions into YouTube, and I will come back and I will answer them. So time frame, as you guys know, for a 1 to 2, especially for your first one, I always suggest work with at least 18 months. We'll just leave our 20% contingency. We've got a pretty high level of confidence on our cost estimates that we're going to do now. Now, these guys are wanting 1.1 mil. That's a red flag to me already. Okay, sewer, $5,000 for a standard connection. Should be fine. Water, 5 should be fine. Stormwater will allow a nominal 1,000, but there may be no cost there. Power and telecoms. Look, I'm going to put in 10 grand for that. So that's for a green boy and the small amount of design that's potentially going to be needed for that. House demo, yes, we're going to need it. Erosion sediment control, no access driveway, no earthworks. Footpath. No, footpath is on the other side of the street. Nothing existing on this side of the street. So we should be fine with that. So we'll delete the footpath. No seepage pits. We'll allow a few $100 for turf. I don't believe there is a fire hydrant, but that's something we can walk along the footpath and check pretty easily. And fencing, as I said, 6-foot timber fence should be sufficient. Pardon me. So 40 plus 20, 100 meters of fencing. What do we got in there? 100 times 110. 110 these days is probably a bit lean. Let's make it 120. And tree clearing. Do we have any tree clearing? Look, a couple of trees there, but that would be covered within the demolition budget with what we've got there. So I'm not going to add any additional there. Stamp duty should be fine. Council contributions, we'll make that 35. 30 doesn't cut it anywhere anymore. These should all be fairly standard. Now, like I've said in the past, this spreadsheet was prepared as a template a couple of years ago now, so most of these will have received some escalation and inflation. However, for when you look at the cost base and you look at our soft costs are 117,000, a large part of that is your stamp duty and your council headworks. In fact, 80,000 of that is. So we're talking about 40,000 is all of this stuff here. If there's been 20% inflation, then it's gone up 8,000. Now, if 8,000 is making or breaking your feasibility, then on your first run, the deal's too tight anyway. Before you go unconditional, absolutely you should go and get quotes and firm up all these numbers. But for this first run of numbers, I'm okay with where that's at the moment. Real estate commission is 2.5 plus GST, which is roughly 2.8%. Legals on sales, lender's break fee. So you could say that's the lender's break fee, or you could also say that's your brokerage cost. Because if you're doing these sorts of deals and you are using a broker and you're turning the deals over in less than 24 months, typically the commission they get from doing your job is going to be clawed back by the lender. So you should budget to pay them their fee. You definitely want a broker on your side. You're going to need them. So make it worth their while. Don't expect that they're going to work for free. That's something I call out with my broker right from the start. Now, we'll come back to realizations. Interest rate, look, I'll say 6% for now. Interest rate, let's presume it's a JV or I've got the money. Land purchase price, 80%, loan, 80% of the land purchase. Okay, and you'll notice here this spreadsheet then tells you the amount of cash you're going to need, 408,000 roughly. Okay, so this is actually something where you can go, oh, okay, yep, 408,000, I've got it, or I can get it with my JV partner, or no, I need to borrow it from an investor, so now I better put in an interest rate for them. That's all calculated over here. Now, realizations. So this is an interesting one. So I've had suggestions of anywhere between, I should put, so these are from land sales agents that I work with on a regular basis, anywhere from feasibility number of 580 up to 650. Pretty big difference. So that's, yeah, $140,000 difference at the other end. Now, this is where, again, this is first run of numbers. Now, of the agents that have given us figures on this, one thing you need to, I guess, develop is, number one, never make your decision on buying based purely on an agent's number. You need to get comfort. You are the one on the line. They have nothing on the line. You also then need to figure out, of the agents that are good, they're not going to be good at everything. They're going to be good at certain things, and they're going to have weaknesses in other areas. They are human beings, and so are the businesses, as in they have weaknesses and strengths. They will also be strong in certain areas and weak in other areas. So I have agents that work in all different areas, and I know from track record which ones are more accurate in different areas. And they can sometimes vary quite significantly. Now, in this case here, the agents that are most dominant in this particular area, they are the ones pushing for, say, 650. So you might wind that back to, say, 630 is your feasibility number if you're not that confident just yet. So for now, we're going to put in 630,000 each. Okay, and let's have a look at where that has us with the feasibility. Boom. All right, so let's even just play with that for a second and go, let's say they're right and it's 650. No. Okay, so bottom line is, this is when we talk about the pillars, you need an edge, you need the right strategy, the right property, and you need the right vendor. Okay, so what's not working here? One, the vendor. It's not the right vendor. They're not motivated enough. They're wanting too high a price and they're willing to wait for it. Two, you could argue that maybe your edge isn't appropriate for this property, as in you don't have enough of an edge to see something different in this that the rest of the market's seeing. Because that is the thing, is typically when you're getting the simplest deals, everyone else is looking at it the same way as well. So it can become a price war unless you've got it off market somehow, or you've made the deal about something else for the vendor. It might be that they're motivated and need a quick settlement, and you can provide that. It might be that they need flexibility, and you can provide that. If you can take the conversation away from the price, or if there is something more valuable to the vendor than price, that's where there can be opportunity. If their only thing is they want the top dollar and they can wait for it, it's not the right vendor. So realistically, for this thing to make any sense at all, yeah, wow. Yeah, it's got to be bought for less than 800,000 to make sense. And that's assuming that the 650 number is correct. Okay, so great property for the subdivision, but the numbers just do not stack. So either we need a significant discount, which is unlikely because this vendor's not in a rush. And in this market, they won't have any trouble selling. They might not get that amount, but you know, if they're willing to wait, they're going to get better than 800. Or there needs to be a strategy that you are an expert in that is going to somehow deliver a very different result. But I can tell you that even in this situation, that's really not going to make sense, because when you think of that, let's go back to this, and let's say we are paying 1.1. It means you are literally paying $111,000 for the privilege to go through 18 months of work to create the land. Just go buy the vacant land. Wait for someone else to develop it and buy the land off them. You'll save yourself $110,000. So that's the thing here. You've got to think of that from both sides. Even if you had a strategy, and this is, you know, I say this a lot, is just throwing a build on top of it, not the answer, because you are literally paying for the privilege to develop the land. So in my opinion, there needs to be money made in the land. Even if you have a strategy that adds more afterwards, whether it be mini boarding houses, whether it be boutique houses, whatever it might be, you shouldn't be paying for the privilege of doing the subdivision. That just doesn't make any sense, because if the market turns, you're not just in hot water, you're drowning, absolutely drowning. So, there's been times where I've done deals where, let's say there was only 15% on the land, but I'm building a boarding house and that's adding another 10, 15%. So in the end, the deal ends up being 25, 30%. But when the land is losing money, well, adding anything else to it's probably only going to bring it, if you're lucky, to 10%. And that's just dangerous territory. So full stop, good property, decent, but not working. So we just move on. And the beautiful thing about that is we figured that out quickly. That is the beauty in this. So don't be disappointed when you figure that out. Be excited about how quickly you figured it out, and look at how you can figure it out even faster next time. That's how you churn through volume to get yourself to the good deals, to the great deals. All right. Remember, put your questions and your comments into YouTube, and I will come back to them. Thanks, guys.